Workbook activities. Workbook activity year 4, lesson, year 3, lesson 4, number 1 is on page 89 of the Eckankar 2 Discourses by Harold Klemp. The inner meaning of this passage means that a Chela Eckankar initiate being able to benefit could either be that Eckankar teachings are not enough for a person to develop, or even a hint that maybe Harold Klemp accepted psychological treatment for his schizophrenia after gaining the title Mahanta or Wei Shou in that August 1983 board meeting. Could that one of the factors that eventually resulted in Doug Kunin receiving the initiation into the 8th circle of Eckankar in January of 2015 by Harold Klemp be that? I can't say the Eckankar community is universal, nor can I say that the masters of the Vairagi order has any reality outside of Eckankar, but I would like to understand more about what that means. The next workbook activity is on the following page and is to represent yourself going through a doorway or window. Is all this talk of reliance on the so-called Mahata or eminence, going from hubris to cosmic consciousness, really only about a psychopath living out his sociopathic tendencies through the corporation he heads? The following workbook activity is on the next 2 pages. An old lesson from a dream around a year ago was to continue in creative consciousness. One can create an exercise to deal with the lessons around old karma by imagining what caused these results, or the situation before that, and making a choice that would have resulted in a different situation. Then demolish or change the scene with the presence of light or sound of a certain type. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, but as I know that not everything that happens to me is my fault, and I can lower certain risks in the future. The Eckankar 2 Discourses by Harold Klemp has workbook activity 344 on page 93. I do not feel like any of my relationships would need to be karmically tied to a past life. My nudge is it's not beneficial in the long run to assert current connections are part of events that are part of a break in physical cause and only brought back into effect by a different physical form being animated by a soul that was part of a different series of physical events. The following workbook activities on the next page. I'm not pretending to have a conversation with the spiritual leader of Eckankar. He calls those who don't live up to their initiations fallen leaves, and those who lack total belief in Eckankar to be weeds. And was it the Unlocking the Puzzle Box conference where he accepted the last questions and started with this talk here? But isn't that making clear he does not love unconditionally? People who admit on occasion to not know everything can't possibly share in your ups and downs. How can he love those who don't know him through physical presence in a personal way? The next workbook activity is on the following page. Instead of trying to pray through some master who was living, wouldn't it be better just to pray out your troubles to Sukamad, or God as a noun, by itself? I have discovered it is not only easier but more effective to worship God alone. Workbook activity 347 is on page 96 of the Eckankar 2 Discourses by Harold Klemp. Everyone should long for a greater wisdom of knowledge. Everyone should wish to be more conscious in all of their existence. It is perfectly fine to write out your requests or issues, but not to people or beings that will never see them, or who could only possibly witness them as a result of being treated as a god. What was the process and results of what you attempted? The next workbook activity is on the following page. It seems that even the bad shows that should not be watched by anyone tend to have characters that play a role of benefiting other characters. It doesn't mean that we should seek out examples from the media, particularly in fictional sources. If Ek means God as a verb, Ek used me to teach and remind others of God and spiritual truths. And if there's any flaw in anything that I have to say, that's my fault. feel free to correct me. Same thing with what I do. The final workbook activity, lesson 4 of the Eckankar 2 discourses, can be said to take up the final 4 pages of this discourse, rather than just page 98 and 99. As much as I'm trying to set a date and time for an inner dream class every night, between when I first go to sleep and 3:20 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, I can select the 17th of the 8th month of 1436 as a special date for it, and can probably continue till I have a certain degree of results. One could make it a spiritual occasion by being the teacher. The only questions I can think to ask Harold Klemp revolve around the problems of belief and practices in Eckankar. Thus far, I have not recalled being with others in the dream state, nor being at the Temple of Golden Wisdom. Members of Eckankar will only receive answers from who they call the Mahanta, the living Eckmaster, indirectly or through personal communication with his physical body. Now, let me iterate here that rather than, confrontational, I will have more of the standard interview. Any Eckankar member, leader or not, I am open to having them on in that capacity as spiritual opinions and spiritual experiences guest.